All right.
We're good?
Yep. So we're in 1981, and you were in Dallas running the data center.
Right. There was 3 data centers in Dallas at the time. Richardson, Dallas 1, Dallas 2. I was the ops manager for Dallas 2.
All right. And then in 81, there's another move.
Well,
for
81,
you.
yeah, so, the D2 was doing quite well, and EDS signs a contract with Wisconsin Blue Cross Blue Shield. And they need somebody to go up there and move their data center from Milwaukee to Sacramento, where we had just built another data center. It moved the one from San Francisco into this brand new building in Sacramento.
So 2 moves.
No, I had nothing to do with that move.
With the San Francisco
No,
one.
the data center had moved from San Francisco to Sacramento.
Right.
Now they wanted to move new business into the Sacramento data center, help pay the bills. And so they asked me if I was interested in going to do that. And I said, yeah, because it was something different and they needed somebody to go do it.
Right.
And it was a skill that I could learn that may be good in the future.
Right.
Because EDS was continuously growing. And so I go to Milwaukee and show up at the Blue Cross Blue Shield office. And they were selecting a team to run the application side. What I was doing in Texas Blue Cross Blue Shield, now they had a team. They were going to bring some people from EDS and integrate the people they were going to keep from Blue Cross Blue Shield into one team to maintain the claim system and probably implement the new EDS claim system. And lo and behold, the guys in charge of that's Jack Kelly. So of course, Jack and I know each other, and we know we're going to work together. So it's a foregone conclusion that whatever happens is going to happen, and we're both going to be involved in whatever for the SE side or the data center side. And so you go up there, and like I said, part of the idea was to migrate some of the people who work for Wisconsin Blue Cross Blue Shield into EDS, and they would move. And there would be some of the data center people. In general terms, almost everybody that I work with from Milwaukee were okay with what was going on. I guess there were some people that were bitter because they probably going to lose their job. But in general terms, everybody seemed to be on board to make it happen professionally. And so we got prepared to move the data center. And of course, you have to figure out what you need to have in Sacramento the day before you make the move. What has to be already there from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wisconsin.
Right.
And then you need to know what the input is for that day's cycle, which you're going to process claims, membership, that kind of stuff. So we spend months planning that, and we exercise it and move some stuff out to test our theories on, is this how it's going to be? I'd never done a data center move before. And I don't think anybody that was working with me. Now, I brought a couple of guys up from Dallas that were EDS data center people that I had known, because I want people working with me that I know. And then we had the SEs that Jack brought up, that some of them I knew because they came out of Dallas also. So we had a good, solid team. And we stayed there. It took us about 9 months, 10 months to move it. I'm thinking 10, 11 months to move it. So it's 82, 83 timeframe that we moved.
When the move was done.
When the move was done. And so we move it out to Sacramento. I'm out in Sacramento finishing up, dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's. One of the guys, bosses from Dallas, come out and recognize me for doing such a great job, et cetera, to get the data center out there pretty flawlessly. But again, Jim, wasn't me. It was all the people that were working with me. I mean, everybody did what they're supposed to do, and it turned out that it was successful.
Now, I'll do a little side trip here. Uh, let's not mention numbers.
Right.
But at some point, you started getting stock in the company for what you were doing.
One of the things that when I came to EDS, part of the pitch was if you help build the company, you're going to get to own part of the company. And my thought was, okay, I don't know what that means, but okay. And when you would do something or successful at it, a lot of times you got a bonus. $100, $500, whatever the bonus was.
Right.
But it was reward for doing good work.
Right.
And so you started doing bigger things where the company was actually making money, and you were part of the company making money. Then you got stock options.
Now, but what I'm getting at is, so you had moved to the point where you were starting to get some of that.
Right.
Now, am I right that at some point that stock split 4 or 5 times in a row?
Yeah, well, that's when you got to go on to the next year. You got to get past 83 to 84. In 1984, GM bought EDS.
Right.
But you would think that GM was going to run everything. But when they bought EDS, the deal was EDS would migrate all of their work to Plano when they built a mammoth 240,000 square foot data center.
We'll get to that. I want to talk about, though, the stock.
That's when it started splitting. That was the cause of EDS stock splitting.
Now, how many times did it split?
4
or
times.
5? 4 times.
4 times that I can remember.
Right. So if you had 10,000 shares, that became 20, which became 40, which became 80,000 shares. Right.
Yeah.
That had to be pretty cool.
Well, yeah, it was very nice, especially if you earned some of the shares. Yeah. And the company also had a stock purchase plan.
Right.
So you could invest, I think it was 10% of your salary.
Right.
At a 15% discount of the stock. So, that was also something that was an opportunity to make 15% almost right away.
Right.
Because there was very little restrictions on selling that stock. But Mom and I, whenever we invested in something, we just let it sit there.
All right. So now we're finishing the Sacramento move. What's next?
So now I'm going back to Dallas. And I can't recall what I went back to do. But it wasn't there long. I think they had built one data center in Plano because Ross Perot had bought a lot of land in Plano. And the idea was to move the EDS headquarters from Forest Lane to Plano. And I don't know how many hundreds of acres or thousands of acres, I don't know how big it was. But his idea was to build an area that had businesses like downtown Dallas. So you had headquarters moving in, like Frito-Lay headquarters moved into that area. J.C. Penney's headquarters was in that land out there. So there's a bunch of headquarters for different companies moving out to the land. And EDS Hello? I'm sorry.
That's all
right. So EDS was going to move out their headquarters anyway, and I think they had started building data centers there. And this was prior to, or maybe they were already negotiating with GM. I'm not sure what caused that to, but Ed Stevens was running part of that operation, and he wanted me to come out there initially as an operations manager. So I went out there and started working in one of the Plano data centers. I think it was Plano 2. And then then the GM contract happened.
right.
And now we're going to move all of the work from Detroit area down to Plano. One data center was up, And when the transition occurred, they brought some of the GM IT guys to Dallas.
So I understand. Did they ask you to move the stuff from Detroit to Dallas?
They asked me to move the stuff from Detroit to Dallas that was going to go into Plano 2.
Right.
There was a team of people in Plano 1 that were moving like Chevy to Plano 1 because there was going to be a migration from everything from down there. And my first opportunity to move something was to move truck and bus, which was a large portion of GM's business. And so I was going to move truck and bus from Detroit to Plano.
At some point, I would know, did you become responsible for all the data centers?
At some point in that next couple of years, next 2 or 3 years, I became responsible for all 4 data centers in Plano. And I was even to the point where I had designed, not being a very good artist, I had laid out on a piece of paper what I thought a control room should look like to run all 4 of those data centers. And I used my experience in Borfig Bunker and that had a diocese and big screens and
Right.
alert systems to say this is where we ought to go. We ought to automate as much as we can. So when something breaks, we can see immediately where it's at because it tells us I broke.
Right.
And so now I didn't stay to see the fruition of that.
Right.
But I went off and did other things. But when I come back from doing other things to Plano, it was built. Now, people may say we were going to do that anyway, but I can't go back and show
They
you.
put your name anywhere on it?
No, I didn't do anything with it. Yeah. But so now and we've moved everything down. We've moved the majority of the work down. And so now I'm finished with pretty much all the work has moved down. Of course, you're running a data center, stuff breaks, and you're going through. One of the things that you learn in data processing is 2 of the most important things you can do is problem management. When you have a problem, how do I address that problem? And change management. Because when you have a problem, you're going to change something. And if you screw up the change, your change management system's not working. So that stuck with me. And I would venture to say today, anytime you are dealing with something online that's not working, somebody made a change and their change management system sucked. So I took that with me from then on. That first thing I did whenever I go someplace, look at change management and problem management.
So what happens after moving the Detroit data centers and then running the data centers?
So now EDS is forming a joint venture company in Korea with Lucky Gold Star.
And we're at around 87, right?
We're just right at end of 86, beginning 87.
Okay.
And I get asked to go set up a technology, go do a data center, create a technology team to go over there and do that in Korea. So I go to Korea. We move to Korea. We get a house that the company rented for us.
Was it nice?
Yeah, very nice house. We get a driver. I don't drive. I have a chauffeur. And if Mom wants to go someplace, I send him back. But Mom would take the bus a lot of times too, just to experiment and do stuff in Korea.
And where in Korea were you?
In Seoul.
Seoul. Wow.
There's a part of Seoul that's called the UN Village, where a lot of expats lived. So we lived in the UN Village.
Ever any problems or issues?
There was a university right below us, and I think part of the college curriculum in Seoul was they had to demonstrate against something. And on a regular basis, the police or the army or whoever would come and fire tear gas. And if we had the windows open, we got tear gas.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, and so we live. It was right on the Han River. You could look out from our house and see the Han River going by. And now I'm in Korea. I think we started with The IT team, the technology team, there was about 6 or 7 Koreans that came to Lucky Gold Star.
And what's your job there? What are you going to do?
I'm going to create a technology team just like Plano or Dallas data center. We're going to build data centers. We're going to migrate all the work from all 51 Lucky Gold Star companies into this data center. We're going to take people from different companies to go in and run the data center, make sure the work is getting done on a regular basis. We're going to figure out how to bill our services to the rest of the companies in Gold Star. So we're going to build an entire new system for them. It's going to look like EDS. And the idea was once you created that, then you could sell it to other companies and bring in new processing. The name of the company was Systems Technology Management, STM. And I brought a couple of guys over from the States to work with me in different areas of data center. But I think the majority there was a few people that came for a couple of months. There's a couple of people that came for longer.
You guys still get together, right?
Yeah, this is, I said earlier in one of our tapes that I didn't stay in touch with anybody. And I generally don't stay in touch with anybody. But there was a gentleman by the name of Jim Williams, who once we got over there, I was looking for a runtime improvement technology guy. EDS sent Jim over there. Jim and I became friends. Jim also spent time in Iran with EDS. And he sets up reunions for the Korean team and the Iranian team about once a year. So without Jim, none of us would probably have stayed connected. But Jim keeps some of us connected, about 6 or 7 of us from Korea.
That's been going on for a long time now.
Well, yeah, it's 40 years almost.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. So
no, that's okay.
You're over there. Before you get into what you're doing, what's the difference between Korean workers and U.S. workers? Something that you noticed.
Well, Korean workers, really sharp, smart people, but they would not use their initiative unless the boss told them to use their initiative, that they should. I mean, they always had to be clear everything they do. They couldn't do anything just on their own initiative, get stuff done. And that was foreign to me.
Like an example. Give an example.
Well, I know I have to move this data center or this data from this device to this device. But the boss didn't tell me it was okay to move the data from this device to this device. So I won't do it until he tells me. And I would get in there and say, well, is data moved? No. Why wouldn't it move? You didn't tell us to. And I mean, after we worked for a little while, they understood that that's not the way I worked. If you knew what was supposed to happen, make it happen. It was broke. Okay, if you're not making a mistake, you're not doing anything. But don't wait for me to tell you because I might not know. And so we put a team together to actually use their imagination, their initiative, and ended up having a pretty darn good team. Build a billing system that made money for the company. And in general terms, again, the technology side of the business was doing quite well. The guy who was running the EDS portion was never there. He was always off traveling somewhere. So I stay there 2 years. I bring people over, like I say, on the TDY basis, but TDY could have been 6 months, a year.
Right.
You stayed there. We did all the moves. We worked with Hitachi was the computer system we were using. It was a Japanese system. And most of the manuals were in Japanese at that time. We didn't. I had a young guy by the name of Chip Kerr, who was a systems programmer. Mm-hmm. And Chip, there was pictures and stuff with the Hitachi equipment and stuff. And Chip figured out it was the same operating system as the IBM operating system. So he figured out he could do stuff without the manual because it was pretty much the same operating system at that time.
Right.
We went to Japan, visited with Hitachi. I mean, so we got to run around Japan, Korea for quite a bit of time. But again, 2 years,
Right.
the company's running, everything's been moved. I'm not real happy with being there, and the guy who's running the thing ain't there. And so I decide I'm going to call it a day in 1988, end of 1988, just before the Olympics started. And so we
Yeah.
come back to the United States. But when I was leaving there, they were going to put me in charge of Asia Pacific. And so on our way back to the United States, with Mom was with me, I toured Singapore, Taiwan. I toured the places that I was going to be responsible for on my way back. Australia. We didn't go to New Zealand.
Wow.
Then I get back into the United States, and I'm running Asia Pacific, Latin America. I make several trips to Brazil, Venezuela.
You're traveling all the time.
I'm
at
traveling
that
all the
point.
time. When I finally retired from EDS and Perot Systems, I had 3 million miles on American Airlines, and I venture I probably had another 1 million miles on other carriers.
All right. So what were you doing now? So you're in charge of Asia Pacific and Latin America.
Right.
Well, what are you doing with that?
Well, a lot of it is to try to build the business. I mean, you go down and you work with the people who are there, but a lot of times you go down to, like, you visit Brazil because of a business opportunity, and you go down to help the guys that are there try to get the piece of business that they're working on. But most of the business was GM.
Now you say that you went to New Zealand.
Yeah, I went to New Zealand.
I got a note here that says Puffing Billy. What does that mean?
Okay, so in '84, when GM purchased EDS, one of the things that I was asked to do was go to Australia and New Zealand to transition the GM workers to EDS. So all the technical guys, like I told you, data centers, SEs and stuff,
Right.
they were GM employees, but they were going to be moved to EDS. And again, GM owned EDS. So, and I went down there to try to put the EDS philosophies and processes and thing in place with those employees. I transitioned the guys in Australia, and I was a runner. Everybody knew I got up early in the morning during the transition period, and I would go out and run a couple of miles. And they said, hey, if you want to challenge, you can race Puffing Billy up a mountain. And Puffing Billy's a steam engine. So I took the challenge. I think it was an 8-mile up the mountain race. And for a good part of the run, I was ahead of Puffing Billy. But I got to a crossing where they crossed the road.
Right.
And once Puffing Billy got ahead of you, there was no catching.
You're not catching
No.
up.
So Puffing Billy beat me about 4 or 8 minutes, something like that. But it was up a mountain.
All the way.
Yeah, there was no, turn the bend and it leveled off or went down there. It went up steeper and up steeper. So it was a good run.
Did you ever go back for a rematch?
No,
No.
I let him win. And
Right.
so I went to New Zealand, to
Right.
Wellington, New Zealand, and did the same thing in Wellington to transition the people to EDS. And there was another GM site there.
Right. All right. So now we're in '89. So what happens in '89?
Well, '89, I get an offer to go to Washington, D.C. to run the data center in Washington, D.C. Mom doesn't want to go. She wants to stay in Dallas. But it's an opportunity. And so I say, okay, and we put our house up for sale.
The one on Cherokee.
This house.
Oh, this house.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we go to Washington. I'm starting to take over the data center, and Mom's very unhappy. And I get a call from Ed Stevens, who had moved when Perot started Perot Systems. He had moved from EDS to Perot Systems with a bunch of other people that went with Perot to start the company. And Ed had called me and asked me if I would like to come over and run data centers like I'd done for EDS. And I told Mom, and we got an opportunity to go back to Dallas. And she, yep, we're going back to Dallas. So we're probably up there a month or so, 5 weeks or so. And I resigned and came back to Dallas and went to work at EDS or Pro Systems.
And since we're sitting in the house, I'm assuming it didn't sell.
No, it didn't. It was only up for 3 weeks or so, and it didn't sell. So sign came down, and we're back.
And so when did you start working for Pro Systems?
Jim,
89 or 90?
89. 89. I've been 13 years with EDS, and I started with Perot in 1989.
All right. Looking back, are you happy with that decision?
Yeah.
Or do you, looking back, do you wish you would have said, damn, I wished I would have stayed with EDS?
No, I think it was a good move for me. I mean, when we start talking about Perot, there was ups and downs, and
right.
One point in time towards the end, I think it was 99, they wanted to fire me. And I was okay with that. They had some requirements they had to meet because I wasn't planning on working too much past my 60th birthday anyway.
Right.
But no, you'll see there's ups and downs. But I think along the way, I've said it in the past, I was just lucky. I mean, almost every time I did something, it turned out to be good for us.
All right. We'll pick up next time with Perot Systems.
Okay. We're getting to the end of my careers.
Yeah. The first one. Well, we're at the end of the second one. The Army was the first one.
EDS was the
and
second.
EDS was the second retirement.
Perot's the third.
So, but you've been retired twice now.
Okay. I wouldn't call that a retirement.